All right, hey, quiet down. So, yesterday we talked about how these countries in Europe were looking to try to find a competitive edge on the battlefield. We mentioned about trench warfare already. So, trench warfare, more offensive or defensive style fighting? Matt, defensive. Yep, good job. So, it took a little bit of time here, obviously, for these countries to get footing, trench themselves down, right, in Europe. So we talked about some of the innovations, forms of technology, weaponry that are applied to the battlefield for the advantage of, let's say, another country to get across no man's land to break the stalemate. So there you go. Give you some time to write down some of these weapons we talked about. And then today I have an assignment for you. So we're working on that after we finish up the stuff. Current events, race, and awesome. Oh, I don't even see Rubik's Cube over here too. There's pockets. Oh, there's see how far they're dipping down. He's like the Green Goblin throwing out. Pumpkin balls.
Please excuse the interruption. At this time, would all seniors please report to the auditorium for your senior meeting?
Yep.
Man, it's been 4 years in a row.
I'm still here.
You wouldn't have had me though.
Why?
I just got moved to this class this year. Yeah. So you'd have to take it up with Mr. Schott. All right, okay, so forms of weaponry we talked about yesterday. Okay, so with trench warfare, we mentioned that this is a defensive war, so they hunkered down in these trenches, really from the beginning, 1914 on. So 4 long years, these soldiers endured in the trenches. We talked a lot about some of the harsh effects of trench lifestyle. So to try to break the stalemate, try to break the deadlock here, what forms of weaponry did we talk about yesterday that were created, that were maybe even altered, innovative for World War One? Because World War One was more of a scientific war, more of an industrial war. And it makes sense because last chapter we just talked about the Industrial Revolution, the first and second wave, and how these new innovations can be applied to the battlefield. So, what do we talk about? Why? Go ahead.
Poison gas.
Yeah, good job, right? We talked about chlorine and mustard gas. And when you first utilize this weapon, you can only imagine these troops as they see this fog, this mist coming at them, right? And they see it and they're like, you know what, no big deal, march right through it. They have no idea what effects are about to come. So yeah, these soldiers start literally bleeding from the eyes, the ears, the nose, and their throat starts to close up. And yes. So if you can't sense the world around you, what good of a soldier are you? You're not much of anything here. So if you're the opposition, either let them suffer, die the hard way, right? Or you just put a bullet in them right then and there. Because they're pretty much useless after intaking a lot of this chlorine or mustard gas. So you can only imagine just the harsh effects of the use of this gas. So again, a lot of it used in no man's land, a lot of it in the bunkers, trenches to try to push these troops out. And with chlorine gas, we talked a little bit about it yesterday. We mentioned the video, right? How it would literally interact with the lungs and people would drown from the inside out as it would have a chemical reaction with some of the fluid within your lungs. So yeah, it was banned after World War One, but you think it stopped some of these countries from utilizing it again? No, it's used quite a bit, and it's unfortunate because it has such harsh effects on the body. With mustard gas, chlorine gas, okay, yeah, these are harsh weaponry. This is harsh weapons, but it just goes to show really with World War One from here on out. If you look up any pictures of World War One, you'll see a lot of troops with gas masks on, and that's why, because the introduction of chemical warfare. All right, good. What else? What else should we talk about? What other forms of weapons? Jason, go ahead. Artillery, yep, good job. So we talked about artillery. Okay, we mentioned a little bit about how this was stationed behind the trenches, constantly shooting up over your trench and into no man's land to try to prevent any invasion from the opposition. Yeah, I would say it's a new form of weaponry, but at the same time, it's being innovated. It's being really advanced at the time to launch these artillery shells longer distance and to have more of an explosive as it hits and impacts the ground. So it's going to make a challenge for any type of troop movement across no man's land. All right, good, good. What else? What else? Nick, go ahead. Flamethrowers. Yep, good job. So we talked a little bit about flamethrowers yesterday. It's not what you see in World War II, right? It's a little bit different. Okay, where there's one man operating this flamethrower. World War One, it was a lot different. So when it comes to crew members operating a flamethrower, you have one person at the nozzle shooting out the flames into, let's say, a trench or a bunker, right, to try to evacuate or try to push these troops out of it, or any type of machine gun nest. And you'd have multiple soldiers holding up the hose, making sure it's not dragging across the ground. There might be a cut inside the hose and it'll make pretty much the weapon useless. And then you'd have a few other soldiers that were maybe pulling this wagon where this fuel is, okay, or somewhat like a wheelbarrow. So yeah, it was very clunky, right? If you're going to use this weapon, you'd have to travel far distances with a lot of manpower to even get the weapon to its destination. So in all reality, was it very useful? Not really, not really. Okay, and I won't want to be the guy really holding that weapon, because if it hits the tank, any type of shrapnel or explosive, then you're going sky high, right? What else? What else? Aaron? Okay, machine guns. Yep, good job. So machine guns, again, not a new form of weaponry in World War One, but again, being more innovative, more adaptive towards the war. Okay, so with these heavy machine guns, you need a couple soldiers there to operate that as well. So a couple to carry the weapon, okay, as it's held on a tripod, and you need a couple soldiers there feeding the ammunition, making sure that the machine gun doesn't jam. And World War One especially, as you're shooting a lot of rounds out of the muzzle here, you need to make sure you can cool it down, because if it overheats, it's going to be operational. Yeah. So at that time, they actually had soldiers that were just pouring water on top of the muzzle there, on top of the weapon, to make sure it's cooled down and that it can still operate. If it overheats, it is out of commission for a little bit, maybe even permanently. So also with machine guns, okay, some of them will be a little bit more mobile, okay, towards the end of World War I as you're making your way into the trenches. Obviously, you need something to get around the tight corners, right? So light machine guns were introduced towards the end of the war. All right, anything else? Anything else here? So with these heavy machine guns, again, you can concentrate your fire on no man's land, trying to take out a lot of enemies here as you're making your way across no man's land. Again, at the start of the war, you got to think a lot of these officials were saying, "Hey, just march right over, no big deal. We'll overwhelm them with our morale, with the motivation." Well, it's only so far as you can go. And you have literally 100 bullets spraying at you from one machine gun. All right, what else? What else? Anything? Jason, on a roll here. Yes, U-boats. Good job to the submarines and how they're used by the Germans, especially to try to gain an advantage out in the Atlantic, out in open water. We already know Great Britain had the advantage when it came to dreadnoughts, battleships on the surface, but these U-boats were used to take out a lot of supplies and different types of resources coming in and out of the island. Right? The best way to try to cut off an enemy is to cut off its resources and supplies. So having means of an economic warfare. Submarines, U-boats, going undetected under the water and causing a lot of hardships for the Allied powers, especially a lot of these supplies here coming from the United States. We'll talk about it. Okay, we'll mention about how, you know, the U.S. does get eventually dragged into this war. A lot of it has to do with unrestricted submarine war. Okay. What else? What else here? Matt. Airplanes. Yeah, good job. Airplanes. So we talked already here about the first flight, early 1900s. Not even 10 years later, these airplanes were equipped for warfare. So with these airplanes, they could fly at speeds of 100, 120 miles per hour. And you could place different types of weaponry on it. Like obviously, bombs that you could drop from the sky, machine guns. And you'd see a lot of dogfights up over the trenches and up over a lot of these manufactured sites all throughout Europe. The goal is, again, cut out the supplies, cut out the manufacturing. So these Zeppelins, okay, would utilize a huge payload of bombs and target a lot of these factories and industries. So the airplanes were used to protect these Zeppelins, all right, or take them out. So dogfights were a new style of fighting that happened up in the air. And like I said, if we get to it, maybe I'll show a movie at the end of the chapter. I'll be a nice guy. Okay, all right. Other forms of weaponry. Nick. No, we didn't. Okay, no, we didn't. So tanks, good job. So again, it's not like we see in your modern day tank or in World War II. These tanks were mostly used as a what? What are they used as, Connor? Yeah, pretty much, right? It was pretty much a huge shield that would just make its way across no man's land. You have a bunch of troops, a squad of troops, maybe 10 to 15, that would fall behind these tanks, being protected by enemy fire because you had this huge chunk of armor that was making its way across this wasteland here, no man's land. And it would mow through any type of barbed wire, crash into the enemy trench, and allow for the troops falling behind it to flow in, okay, causing maybe a successful invasion. Were they very reliable, though, at the start of the war? Were they? Why? No. Because they break down, right? What's that? Yeah, they couldn't move too fast. A lot of times they'd break down. They wouldn't make their way even 10 yards. They were very slow as well, because at the time, again, it's kind of hard to move this type of machine at the start of World War I. Right, with these tanks, okay, where did it get its name? Talked about this yesterday. Where did it get its name? Boston.
Because when they were starting it and sending it over, they would classify them as water tanks.
Yes, good. So Great Britain, as they're bringing these tanks over to Europe, okay, they disguised them as water tanks, right? They had the box all driving, and they said, oh, they're just water tanks. We want to make sure the Germans can see what type of weaponry they're placing on the battlefield. But with tanks, they would be beneficial on the battlefield from here on out. Obviously, right? We still use them today. A lot more innovative, but in any case, they're very useful. All right, anything else? Parker, anything? Or do we hit them all? Okay, all right, so here's your assignment. you need to do a little bit more research into these forms of weaponry in World War One. I think it's important to talk about. We get to World War II, there'll be more forms of newer forms of weaponry that I think you'll like to see. Here we go. Once it loads, there we go. All right, so your assignment, weapons of warfare, World War One. Okay, I'll just publish it right now then, so you have it. So follow along as we go over it. I'd like you to work on this throughout the rest of class. You should have enough time. It's not 3 minutes. Not bad, huh? Not bad. Okay. So this is what it looks like. When it loads. There you go. So this is what it looks like here. You have a few pictures I put there up for you. I want you to explain the importance of the weapon and technology. So you can kind of use already what we talked about in class and utilize your notes to help you. Yeah, notes. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, and then I'd like you to include when was this weapon first introduced? By which country? So it might be tough to maybe find some of that, but try your best, do a little bit of research into it. And then once you have that, make sure you cite your source. So if you find it online, make sure you cite an MLA, right? MLA citation. You can find out on the homepage how to cite these sources, right? If, again, it's hard to find, you can just kind of cite the notes that we talked about in class. So just say, oh, notes in class, because we discussed a lot of these weapons already. So some of them we didn't mention, okay? But I'd like you to do a little bit more research, look into these weapons. All right, so is there any questions here on the first three things here I'd like you to do for each forms of weaponry? No? At the bottom, what I want you to do is then find other forms of technology and weaponry that first appeared in the Great War. So listen, explain at least two forms of weaponry and technology that we didn't talk about, that we didn't discuss, okay, that aren't listed above. So maybe there's something that, we didn't talk about in class. Maybe there's something that you want to include that's unique, that's new to the war, right? And that we didn't discuss. So put that at the bottom. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. Every time I have this assignment, I have a few people that just don't even work at the very bottom. So there you go. There you go. Make sure you cite to wherever you found that way. Okay. MLA. Real quick, I'll show you where to find MLA citations. It's on the home page. There's the assignment there on the home page. Come on. So in course overview, you'll find the citation format right here. So if it's a book, which probably won't be a book, but if it is, okay, there it is. Okay, you just cite it, you just plug and chug literally, right? Journal articles, chapters from books, electronic resources, it's all right there. Okay, you got it. All right, so when we have any research later in the year, later in this chapter, when we talk about certain battles in World War I, you'll have to refer to this page as well when it comes to citations. All right, any questions here? Austin.
So you have a picture of a railway. Were those produced in World War II or World War I? I thought they were World War II.
Railway gun?
It said railways, not
Well,
railway
yeah,
gun.
but there's a
The
picture.
railway gun, that is, you're thinking of World War II picture.
That's what I'm doing.
And that is a World War II picture.
I would think it's a piece of artillery that they're just transporting to the front lines.
No, that's a railway. gun.
Yeah, that's a straight up gun, that German.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
Okay, well, hey, do some research into it then.
You want us to research the railway gun?
No, just do some artillery then. How about it?
Artillery at the top? Yeah. You have it.
Let me check this out. Wow, aren't you guys World War I buffs here? Let's see this here. Let's see this.
Yeah, if you look at it, it just connects.
Railways.
Well, yeah, that's a
But
railway.
that's
gun.
a railway gun.
Heck yeah, man. Look at that thing.
That was a World War II weapon.
Lomping some artillery down on the enemy, man. All right, anyway, railways.
We're talking about trains.
Yes,
Okay.
you guys are crazy. You guys are crazy.
Why would you not?
All right, there you go.